The night Zara Osei almost lost everything began with a spilled glass of water and a man who thought the world owed him silence. She had been on shift for 6 hours straight when the black SUVs pulled up outside Harlow's, the kind of vehicles that didn't belong on a street like Clement Avenue. Too clean, too quiet, too deliberate. 3 of them, parked in a row like a warning. Zara watched through the front window while refilling the sugar dispensers, her hands moving on autopilot, her eyes fixed on the man who stepped out last. He wasn't the biggest one. He wasn't the loudest. But every other man in that parking lot watched him the way water watches gravity, naturally, without choice. Tall, dark suit, the kind of face that had never once in its life been told no. He walked like the sidewalk was built for him specifically. Zara turned back to the sugar dispensers. She had bigger problems than rich men with expensive cars. Her younger brother Tobias had a specialist appointment in 11 days that their insurance had just denied coverage for. Her landlord had sent a 3rd notice about the water damage in Unit 4B. Her unit. And her manager Dale had already warned her twice this month about being too slow on the floor. Whatever that meant, she wasn't slow, she was precise. There was a difference, but Dale had never once cared about the difference. The man came in with 5 others and took the corner booth without waiting to be seated. Zara clocked it immediately. The corner booth was reserved, a birthday party of 8 coming in at 7:30. It was 6:49. She finished with the sugar dispensers, tucked the tray under her arm and walked over. "Good evening," she said, setting the tray down on a nearby surface and pulling out her notepad. "Welcome to Harlow's. I do want to let you know that this booth is reserved, starting at 7:30, so I can get you all set up here until then, or I can seat you at one of the larger tables on the east side. They're actually more comfortable for a group your size." The man didn't look up from his phone. One of the others, younger, sharper jaw, wearing the kind of watch that cost more than Zara's entire yearly rent, looked at her with something between amusement and contempt. "He heard you," the young one said. "I'm sure he did," Zara said pleasantly. "I just want to make sure we're all on the same page about the reservation." The man with the phone finally looked up. His eyes were dark, and the way they settled on her made something in her stomach go very still. Not fear, exactly. More like the feeling before a storm when the air pressure drops and the birds stop singing. "Bring us water," he said. That was all. His name, she would learn later, was Conrad Vale, 41 years old. Real estate, at least on paper. 3 buildings in Soma, 2 in the marina, a stake in a hotel development currently under review by the City Planning Commission. That was the surface. Underneath it, according to the things people whispered in this part of the city, was something considerably less above board. But Zara didn't know any of that yet. All she knew at 6:51 on a Tuesday evening was that this man had just ordered water from her like she was furniture, and that she had a job to keep. She brought the water. She took their orders, steak, salmon, pasta, 2 more steaks, and she did it without fuss, without attitude, without any of the slow burn that was quietly building behind her sternum. She had mastered that particular skill over 4 years of food service, the ability to let things move through her instead of into her. You heard the rude comment, you felt the dismissal, and then you let it drain out through your feet, like water through sand, and you went on with your shift. The problem started at 7:15. She was carrying a tray of drinks to table 9 when the youngest of Conrad Vale's companions, the one with the watch, stuck his foot out into the aisle. Not all the way, just enough. Just enough that when Zara's heel caught the edge of it, the tray tilted, and the glass of water closest to the edge slid off and hit the floor. It didn't shatter, it bounced actually, which was almost funny, but the water went everywhere, including on the shoe of the man at table 9, a retired teacher named Mr. Baumgartner, who came in every Tuesday for the pot roast and always tipped 20% and never once in 4 years had caused her a moment of trouble. "Oh, goodness, I'm so sorry, Mr. Baumgartner." "Not your fault, sweetheart," he said, already reaching for his napkin. He'd seen it. His eyes moved briefly to the man with the watch, then back to Zara with something like sympathy. She got Mr. Baumgartner sorted. She replaced his drink. She cleaned the floor. And then she walked back past the corner booth, and the young one with the watch said, loudly enough for the surrounding tables to hear, "You might want to watch where you're going, sweetheart. This isn't a daycare." Zara stopped. She turned around slowly. The young man was smiling. The others at the table were watching, some amused, 1 or 2, and carefully neutral. Conrad, looking at his phone again. "I appreciate the feedback," Zara said. Her voice was even. "I'll keep that in mind." She walked away. At 7:22, she went to the back to check on Mr. Baumgartner's pot roast and found Dale waiting for her near the pass-through window, his arms crossed, his expression doing the thing it did when he was working himself up to something he'd already decided. "The table in the corner," he said, keeping his voice low. "You know who that is?" "A man who ordered 6 entrees," Zara said. That's Conrad Vale, Zara. She looked at him. The Conrad Vale, Dale said, as though repetition would make the name mean more to her. He owns half the commercial property on this block. He's been talking about buying this building for 2 years. Okay, Zara said. So I need you to be. Dale made a vague gesture that she had learned to translate as whatever they want, however they want it, at whatever cost to your dignity. Accommodating. I am accommodating, Zara said. I'm also going to accommodate the birthday party that booked the corner booth 6 weeks ago, which arrives in 8 minutes. Dale's jaw tightened. Maybe we find them another spot. Dale. She said it quietly, the way you'd speak to someone standing too close to a ledge. Mrs. Huang is turning 70 tonight. Her daughter flew in from Portland. They booked that booth in August. I'm not moving them. She picked up Mr. Baumgartner's pot roast and walked back to the floor, 7:28. 2 minutes to spare. She approached the corner booth and set her smile in place, the professional one, the one that took no work and gave nothing away. Gentlemen, I want to give you a heads up. Our 7:30 reservation will be arriving shortly, so whenever you're ready, I can help you transition to one of the other tables. Your food will be out in about 10 minutes, and I'll make sure the move is seamless. The young one with the watch laughed. Actually laughed. We're not moving. I understand the booth is comfortable, Zara said. The table I have in mind is actually larger. More room to spread out. You'd have more privacy. We're not moving. He said it slowly, like she hadn't understood the first time. Zara looked at Conrad Vale. He had put his phone down. He was watching her now. Not with the phone-distracted indifference from earlier, but with something more focused, more deliberate. Like he was seeing her for the first time and finding the sight of her interesting in a way she wasn't entirely sure she liked. Mr. Vale, she said, addressing him directly. I have a family that has been looking forward to this evening for months. I'd like to honor their reservation. Something shifted in his expression. It was subtle, and she couldn't have named exactly what it was. Not quite surprise, not quite respect, something adjacent to both. Marcus, he said. Just the name. The young one, Marcus, stopped smiling. He looked at Conrad. Conrad nodded, almost imperceptibly, toward the other tables. Marcus stood up. The others followed. They moved to the larger table on the east side, the one Zara had suggested twice already, and they did it without further comment. Zara had 45 seconds to reset the corner booth before the Huang family walked through the door. She made it with 4 seconds to spare. The rest of the evening should have been straightforward. The Huang party was wonderful, loud and warm and full of laughter, the kind of table that makes a shift feel like something other than labor. Mr. Baumgartner finished his pot roast and left her a note along with his tip that said, in his careful handwriting, "Keep your chin up, young lady." Conrad Vale's table ate their food and ordered dessert, and for a period of approximately 40 minutes left her alone. Then Marcus dropped his fork. It landed on the floor, clean side down, which meant she'd need to bring him a replacement. She was on her way to do exactly that when he reached out as she passed and closed his fingers around her wrist. Not hard, not in a way that would leave a mark, but deliberately, intentionally, in a way that said, "I can." "Get me another fork," he said. Zara went very still. She looked down at his hand on her wrist. She looked up at his face. He was smiling again, that same sharp, self-satisfied smile from earlier. "I'm aware you need a fork," she said. "I was on my way to get you one. What you're doing right now needs to stop." "Needs to," he repeated like the phrase amused him. "Yes," she said. "Needs to." She didn't pull her arm away. That was the thing people never understood about moments like this. The instinct was to pull, to yank, to create a scene. But pulling created resistance, and resistance was a contest, and she wasn't interested in contests. She simply kept her arm very still and held his gaze and waited, with the calm of someone who had made a decision and was at peace with the consequences of it. Marcus felt the stillness. She watched him feel it. Something in his smile wavered. Conrad Vale's voice came from the other side of the table. "Let go of her arm, Marcus." Marcus let go. Zara went and got a fork. She came back and set it on the table without a word and began to turn away. "What's your name?" Conrad said. She looked at him. "Zara, you're not just a waitress, are you, Zara?" It wasn't quite a question. She considered him for a moment, this man with his expensive suit and his complicated reputation and his surprisingly quiet voice. "Tonight I am," she said, and walked away. She found out later, from a busboy named Kevin who knew everything about everyone, that Conrad Vale had been watching her for the rest of that shift. Not in the way Marcus had. Nothing predatory, nothing uncomfortable. Just watching. The way you watch something that doesn't fit the category you've put it in. She didn't think about it much. She had other things to think about. The insurance denial for Tobias had come with a review process attached, and the review process required documentation, that required a doctor's letter, that required a phone call she hadn't had time to make. She called from the bus on the way home, got a voicemail, left a message, hung up, and stared out the window at the city scrolling past in the dark. Tobias was 23 and had been living with a degenerative joint condition since he was 17. Not life-threatening, not immediately, but progressive and painful and increasingly complicated, and the specialist he needed. Anand Reyes over at UCSF had a 14-week waitlist and didn't take her insurance anyway, unless the referral came through a specific pathway that the primary care doctor had filled out incorrectly the first time and was apparently in no hurry to correct. She was 28 years old, and she was tired in a way that had nothing to do with the hours she'd worked. She got home at 11:15, heated up the soup she'd made on Sunday, and sat at the kitchen table with her laptop open to the insurance portal. She fell asleep in the chair at 1 in the morning, the denial letter still on the screen. 2 weeks passed. Conrad Vale came back to Harlow's on a Thursday alone this time and sat at one of the regular tables, not the corner booth. Zara saw him come in from across the room and felt something sharpen in her attention, not alarm exactly, more like awareness. The kind you develop when something unexpected repeats itself. "She walked evening," she said. "Will anyone be joining you?" "No," he said. He was looking at the menu, but in the way people look at menus when they've already decided. "Just me." She took his order, the salmon, black coffee, and brought it without incident, and for most of the meal he ate and read something on his phone and left her alone, and she left him alone, and it was a perfectly unremarkable dinner, except that when she cleared his plates, he said, without looking up, "The thing with Tobias, the insurance. It went through yet?" She went absolutely still. "I'm sorry," she said. Now he looked up. His expression was neutral, careful, like a man walking on ice who knows exactly where he's putting his feet. "The referral pathway issue. Dr. Reyes at UCSF. It's fixed. Your primary care office should have a notification by tomorrow morning." The room felt slightly tilted. "How do you know any of that?" she said. "Because I looked into it," he said, simply, like it was the most natural thing in the world. "You looked into it," she repeated. "I have people who are good at cutting through administrative systems," he said. It seemed like something that needed cutting through. She stared at him for a long moment. The soup was warm in the kitchen, and table 12 was waiting for their check, and the world was continuing to operate around her in its normal way. But inside the small and suddenly strange radius of this conversation, none of that felt quite real. "Why?" she said. He considered the question in that careful way of his. "Because someone should have," he said finally. She didn't know what to say to that. She wasn't sure there was anything to say to that. She said, "Thank you," because those were the only words that fit the shape of the moment, and then she went to take care of table 12, and she didn't look back at him, and she felt his eyes on her the whole way across the room. The situation with Marcus came to a head on a Friday night, 3 weeks after the first incident. He came in without Conrad this time, just him and 2 others Zara recognized from the original group. They sat in the middle of the room, not her section, but Paige, the other server on that section, came to find her in the back 10 minutes in, looking rattled. "The guy in the grey suit keeps asking for you specifically," Paige said. "He says he won't order until you come to the table." Zara dried her hands on her apron. "Did he say why?" Paige hesitated. "He said you have unfinished business." Zara walked out to the floor. Marcus was sitting with his elbows on the table, relaxed, the posture of a man who had arranged a situation to his liking. When she approached, he smiled. "There she is," he said. "I was starting to think you'd left early." "I'm here," Zara said. "What can I get you?" "An apology, maybe," he said, for the attitude last time. The table nearby had gone quiet. Paige was still hovering near the service station, watching. From the kitchen, Zara could hear the normal sounds of a busy Friday, the clatter, the call-outs, the controlled chaos. But out here, around this table, the air had gone very still. "I don't have anything to apologize for," Zara said. Her voice was even. Not loud, not aggressive, just certain. "She doesn't have anything to apologize for," one of Marcus's companions mimicked in a falsetto and laughed. Marcus reached up and flicked the small notebook out of her hand. It hit the floor and skidded under the table. "Pick it up," he said. Zara looked at the notebook on the floor. She looked at Marcus. She looked at him for long enough that the smile on his face began to do something complicated, because he could feel it. The absence of fear, the absence of the reaction he was built to produce. She crouched down, picked up the notebook, and straightened up. And then, in one smooth motion, she took Marcus's water glass, which was full and cold and beaded with condensation, and set it down with a sharp crack directly in front of him, close enough that the water sloshed over the rim and spread across the table, soaking the cuff of his jacket. "I think you're done for the evening," she said. "I'll let the manager know you're leaving." Marcus pushed back from the table. "You think that was smart?" he said. His voice had dropped, and all the performative ease had gone out of it. What was underneath was something harder and less pleasant. "I think you need to leave," she said. "Do you know what I could do to you? To this job? To your—" He stopped. Everyone stopped. Because the front door of Harlow's had opened and Conrad Vale was standing in it. He wasn't dressed for dinner. Jeans, a dark jacket, the kind of clothes you wore when you were somewhere because you needed to be there, not because you'd planned to be. His eyes moved across the room in about 2 seconds, landed on Marcus, and something in his face went very quiet, the kind of quiet that is louder than most things. Marcus saw him. Marcus's jaw worked. Marcus said, "Yes," Conrad said. "You were." He didn't move from the doorway. He didn't need to. Marcus gathered himself, said nothing to Zara, nothing to his companions, and walked to the front, and his companions followed, and they left. The door closed behind them. The room gradually reconstituted itself. The noise level climbed back, people looked back at their food, conversations resumed. Zara stood in the middle of it and breathed. Conrad walked over to her. He stopped a respectful distance away, not close, not crowding, and looked at her with that careful measuring look she was beginning to recognize. "Are you all right?" he said. "I'm fine," she said. "He won't be back," Conrad said. "I'll see to it. I can handle it myself." "I know you can," he said. "I've watched you handle it for a month. I'm not suggesting you can't. I'm saying that you shouldn't have to, and that it won't happen again." She looked at him for a moment. Outside, through the front window, she could see the taillights of Marcus's car pulling out of the lot. "Why were you here?" she said. "Tonight. You weren't here for dinner." A pause. Something shifted in him. Not discomfort, exactly, but the particular quality of a person deciding how honest to be. "Kevin called me," he said. "Kevin, the busboy, called you. Kevin is very perceptive and has my number," he said, and there was something almost wry in his voice, which was the first time she'd heard that from him, and it surprised her. He said Marcus had come in asking for you by name and that it seemed like it was going to be a problem. Zara absorbed this. "Kevin called you instead of the police. Kevin made a judgment call about who could resolve the situation more efficiently," Conrad said. She almost laughed. It surprised her that she almost laughed, standing in the middle of her section, apron still on, notebook still in hand, Friday night still in full swing around her. "Mr. Vale," she said. "Conrad," he said. She looked at him. "If you're going to keep refusing my help and then accepting it anyway," he said, "you might as well use my first name." This time she did laugh. Short, involuntary, honest. "I haven't accepted your help," she said. "Tobias has an appointment with Dr. Reyes on the 14th, he said. She closed her mouth. The 14th was in 9 days. She'd been waiting for confirmation from the insurance company for 3 weeks, and somehow, in the space of 2 weeks since Conrad Vale had sat at her table and told her it was handled, it had been handled. She'd gotten the notification 2 days ago, but hadn't let herself think too hard about where it had come from. "What do you want from me?" she said. It came out more directly than she'd intended, but directness was the only currency she trusted. He didn't flinch from the question, didn't deflect, didn't dress it up. Just said, with that same careful honesty, "To have dinner. Somewhere that isn't here." She studied him, the city outside, the restaurant around them, with its Friday noise and its warm light and its complete indifference to this particular conversation. "I don't date people I don't know," she said. "Then let me not be a stranger," he said. She thought about Tobias, who would have laughed himself sick at this scene. She thought about Mr. Baumgartner's note, still folded in her jacket pocket. "Keep your chin up, young lady." She thought about what it meant to be the kind of person who let things drain through instead of in, and whether that had been strength this whole time or something closer to a habit of making herself smaller. "I have Sundays off," she said. Conrad Vale nodded once, like he'd been willing to wait for however long it took to get there. "Sunday, then," he said. She told Tobias about it that night, sitting on the edge of his bed while he iced his knee, and he stared at her for a solid 5 seconds before saying, "The Conrad Vale." "That's what Dale said," she told him. "Zara. That's—" He sat up straighter, then winced, then settled back against the pillow. "That's a lot, I know. He fixed the insurance thing. Yes, just fixed it, like it was a broken shelf, essentially." Tobias was quiet for a moment. Outside their apartment window, the city made its usual nighttime sounds. A siren somewhere distant, a car, a burst of music from the bar 2 blocks down. "Do you like him?" he asked. She thought about it honestly. "I don't know him well enough to like him." But she looked at her brother, 23 years old, too much pain for someone his age, too much patience, the kindest person she knew. "But I don't not," she said. Tobias smiled. It was the same smile he'd had since he was 7, lopsided, easy, the kind that made people around him feel settled. "Good enough," he said. "That's a good enough place to start." There were things she found out about Conrad Vale over the weeks that followed. Some of them were the things people said in quiet voices, the properties, the influence, the parts of his operation that didn't appear on any filing with the city. She didn't pretend those things weren't there. She wasn't naive about what she'd walked into. But there were other things, too. That he had a sister in Sacramento who called him every Sunday and who he always picked up for, no matter what. That he'd grown up in this city, in a neighborhood 4 miles from hers, in circumstances that had required a particular kind of toughness to survive. That he kept, in his office, a photograph of a woman who looked enough like him that Zara understood without asking. His mother, gone before she'd seen him become what he became. That when she told him one evening over dinner about the night she'd first seen him step out of the black SUV and known, bone deep, that something was about to complicate her life, he laughed. A real one, unguarded, the kind she hadn't heard from him before. "You knew that just from watching me walk?" he said. "I knew it from watching everyone else watch you walk," she said. He was quiet for a moment, "And you didn't run." "I had a shift to finish," she said. He looked at her across the table, and the way he looked at her was the way she had first seen his companions look at him. Like she was something that commanded attention without asking for it. "You've never run from anything in your life," he said. She thought about 4 years of shifts, of Dale's management style and Marcus's grab and the insurance portal open on her laptop at 1 in the morning, of Tobias's appointments and the water damage in Unit 4B and the way she'd learned to let things drain through her feet instead of into her bones. "I've wanted to," she said honestly. "Plenty of times, but you didn't know." He picked up his coffee cup. The restaurant around them hummed with other people's evenings. "Neither did I," he said, "for what it's worth." She looked at him, this complicated man in his complicated life, who had looked at her across a corner booth on a Tuesday night and seen something he apparently hadn't been expecting, who had fixed an insurance pathway because someone should have, and shown up on a Friday because Kevin made a judgment call and waited, with the patience of someone accustomed to very long games, for Sunday. For what it was worth, she thought, it was worth quite a lot. Marcus was gone from her life entirely by the end of the month. She didn't ask exactly how. Conrad told her, simply, that certain arrangements had been restructured, and she accepted that the way she accepted most things about him, not blindly, not without seeing it clearly, but with open eyes and the understanding that the world was more complicated than any one of its inhabitants got to decide. Dale, it turned out, did not need to be complicated at all. He promoted her to floor manager in November, citing her exceptional composure under pressure, in a way that made her think he'd never once noticed what had caused that pressure in the first place. She took the promotion. She used the raise to cover Tobias's co-pays. Dr. Reyes cleared Tobias for the new treatment protocol in early December. The first session was on the 14th. The appointment that had been made possible by an insurance pathway, that had been fixed by a man who had walked into her restaurant and found her more interesting than he'd bargained for. Tobias texted her from the waiting room before they called him in. "The chair in here has better lumbar support than my bed. Upgrading my whole life." She was on the floor when the text came in, and she read it standing next to the service station. And something released in her chest that she hadn't even fully realized had been clenched there. Not the whole thing. Life didn't work that simply, and she knew that better than most. But enough. Enough to breathe around. That evening Conrad met her outside after her shift. He was leaning against his car. Not the SUV, the quiet sedan he used when he was just being a person instead of whatever he was in the other hours. And the city was doing that thing it did in December, the cold and the lights, and the sense of everything being both more fragile and more vivid than usual. "How is he?" Conrad said. "He says the chair in the waiting room has good lumbar support," Zara said. Conrad made a sound that was almost a laugh. She was getting better at reading his almost logs, the small ones, the ones he didn't fully let out. This one was fond. It surprised her every time, how much fondness could exist in a person who had built himself around other things entirely. "That's good," he said. "Yeah," she said, "it is." She stood next to him in the cold for a moment, watching the street. The city moved around them. A bus, a couple arguing quietly, a man walking a dog that was deeply unhappy about the weather. "You ready?" he said. She thought about the first night and the spilled water and the notebook on the floor. She thought about Tobias's lopsided smile. That's a good enough place to start. "Yeah," she said. "Let's go."